Hey, how's it going? Welcome. Another Q&A on tap here at the ranch. That noise you might hear in the background is 50-mile-an-hour winds hitting the house. It has been biblical wind over the past week. In fact, last night they shut the I-25 and the 599, and I barely got back into town because it was a full-on sandstorm brownout, I guess you could say. COVID is seemingly, I kind of feel like we're headed potentially in the right direction with COVID. But I'm not worried about COVID in America anymore. What I'm worried about now is the sense of collective amnesia taking over the entire American political establishment. Have you noticed that over the past couple of weeks? No one can seem to remember anything about anything they did at any point in time. I find that kind of bizarre. I think it's an epidemic. It could be endemic or a pandemic of memory loss by our entire political establishment. It is a bit odd. Now, you hear people say, I remember where I was when the Kennedy assassination happened. Or maybe they say, I know exactly where I was when 9/11 happened. Me, I don't remember any of that. But what I do remember is Tawny Katane sliding down the hood of that Jaguar in the Whitesnake video. I remember exactly where I was when I saw that for the first time. So I don't know. Maybe I have some sort of selective memory loss. I don't know. Okay. Q&A. I'm one person with one opinion. By the way, I have so much going on right now. I'm kind of nervous. I'm waking up in the middle of the night with like those stress moments of I don't have enough time to get done what I need to get done. I can't share with you all the details of what's coming up over the next 4 months, but there's a lot of stuff happening, the vast majority of which is all good. So the only person I have to blame for any of this kind of stress is me. But consequently, I'm trying to build up an amount of content before I go so that if I get stuck in the field and I'm not able to do some of the things I would normally do, I'll have a little bit in reserve. That's the theory anyway. Whether I'll actually get to that, I don't know. I don't know if you can see it. My solar generator is charging over here. I put new pedals on the Brompton. I put MKS quick release pedals on it. They are not clipless, which is a bit of a change for me. I'm used to riding in clips. But I like it. And they quick release pedals come off, which makes the bike super thin, and hopefully I can put it in the overhead compartment on an airplane. Foreshadowing, that was a foreshadowing alert. But I'm getting sidetracked here. I've also got something new on my other bike. By the way, I don't constantly buy new stuff for my bikes. The other bike I rode stock for 9 years. I just changed something on it for the first time, but I'm going to do a blog post about it because it doesn't really fit the Q&A. No one asked me questions about it because none of you knew I was going to do it. But let's get to this. Again, I'm one person with one opinion, and I appreciate everybody who sends in questions. And some of these I think are fantastic. And again, one person, one opinion, and I'm probably going to say some things that are going to ruffle some feathers. I'm just guessing. Question number 1. Do you prefer to sequence images chronologically or thematically, or does it depend on the story? Short answer, it depends on the story. I don't remember the last time. Wait, I lied. I do remember. I would normally never edit or sequence a book chronologically because it's not really the way that I do stories. The only time I can remember doing that is when I used to shoot weddings, and the clients and the client's family, they always thought that they needed or wanted sort of the big classic wedding style book, which to me was kind of like my least favorite style of book. I would make those for people. Yes, they were profitable, but to me, what I would do without telling them is I would take a blurb 6x9 softcover trade book, which has a page limit of 440 pages, and I would do a 6x9 softcover 440 page chronological timeline of the whole wedding day. And a 6x9 softcover feels like an informal book compared to the giant like wedding album-y thing. And I would make it without telling the client, and then I would show them and go, hey, I did this. And inevitably, they'd be like, oh, that looks amazing. I want one. My brother wants one. And people would just start buying them like crazy because they were less formal. And it was just a serious sequential chronological timeline. If I'm doing a documentary project, it never works that way, at least not for me. Maybe I'm not good enough to shoot chronologically. It's all over the place. And then at the end, the beauty of a good documentary project is not only trying to make the best work possible, but it's editing and sequencing that work. And then the final part of doing any kind of documentary project for me is putting that into print. If it doesn't live in print, the story's not done. I never feel complete. I always feel like I left the door open. Again, that's me. It doesn't have to be a traditionally published book for the masses. It can just be a single copy of something, and that's fine. It makes me feel like I've come full circle, but typically thematically as opposed to chronologically. Question numero dos. Interesting question here. How do you dress for a portfolio review? It's a good question. If I had to use one word, I would say hip. Just be hip, but wear something that you actually feel comfortable in, something that feels like you. You can wear something hip that is clearly not you. Like I used to have this shirt. I don't remember where I got it. It was skin tight. It had like the Charlie Brown kind of W pattern on it, but the base of the shirt was orange, but it had a gold reflective layer. And it was orange and gold, and it had these giant things. It was potentially the ugliest, most offensive shirt I've ever seen in my life. I don't actually remember where I got it. And by the way, if I failed to mention this, it was like 4 sizes too small. It was so small and tight that it would kind of ride up and look like a half shirt. So like my belly would hang out, my gut would hang out. I don't have a gut, but if I did, it would have been hanging out. And I would wear this to friends' parties and like dinners at friends' houses just to see what would happen. And I have pictures, I have Polaroids of me posing with people at dinners because they were laughing so hard at this shirt. I wouldn't wear that to a portfolio review. But you wear something that looks cool. You don't have to go over the top. Like portfolio reviews, often there's somebody's going to walk in with prints that are like 6 feet wide and these giant black cases, and they force everybody to wear gloves to look at their prints. No one wants to do that anymore. So don't be that person. And then there's always going to be somebody that comes in maybe in board shorts and flip-flops with their baseball hat on backwards. I wouldn't be that guy either. However, I heard an urban legend or a myth or a story, or maybe it's true, that a Magnum photographer who will remain nameless showed up at his sort of induction ceremony at Magnum in board shorts and flip-flops. And I hope that story is true because he is one of my all-time favorite photographers. I think he's an absolutely stunning talent as a photographer. And you know what, if he wants to do that, because I think that fits kind of who he is. But for most of us, just aim down the middle, right? Just throw a fastball down the middle of the plate. You don't have to hit 100 miles an hour. You don't have to put like, pine tar on it, nothing. Just throw down the middle, wear something that makes you comfortable, that looks good and that looks hip. Don't wear overalls and dad jeans. Okay. Number 3, the question is, what are my GFX ambitions? And I think GFX is the Fuji medium format. I hope this is what that is. I should know this. And I'm pretty sure that's what this person meant. Fuji GFX, which is their medium format camera system, which by all measure looks to be absolutely stellar, because when I see some of my friends who are some of the best photographers in the world, and that is no bragging on my part, I just happen to know these people from spending the last 30 years around the photo industry. When I see the number of people converting from 35 millimeter base cameras and also other digital back cameras like the Blod system to Fuji in the numbers that I'm seeing, and how happy these photographers are when they tell me about how this GFX stuff works, it's gotta be great. I have zero ambition with GFX unless someone was to give me one, and I think the odds of that happening are probably as good as the odds of the American political establishment somehow discovering their memories once again. It's not going to happen. There's no reason for Fuji to do that. I'm sure the GFX would work wonders for me. I think it would be interesting to do a documentary project with the rangefinder version of that camera. Hopefully there's a small, like a pancake lens or something tiny that's relatively fast that you could put on the front. I think it would be fun for me to do a documentary project with that, just to see what the look would be like, and also to have a file size like that. Again, this ain't happening. I use the regular Fuji X stuff. That stuff is fine, and I'm using a Sony to record right now, and I've got a myriad of other cameras, but I don't really have any ambitions. I get asked a lot too, because I used to do a YouTube series called The Leica File, where I would take images that I made with the Leica and I would break down each image unless I start shooting film again, which I have tons and tons of film, but I have no intention of shooting it right now. Logistically, it doesn't work for me, and I can't imagine Leica giving me a digital body. That, again, that's as unlikely as any other brand. That'd be like Nikon reaching out and being like, hey, here's a whole system for you. I'm not the kind of guy that gets camera sponsorship because I don't think my mentality fits what camera companies are looking for in someone to sponsor. I'm not technical enough. I'm not lusty. I don't wake up in the morning and dream of getting a new camera. That's not in the thing. That's not my collective memory. What is man, I wish I had time to shoot in the field. So I'll give you a little. This is not part of the question of GFX ambitions, but it's an important point. So someone reached out the other day, somebody who I really respect, and he's a friend, and also we work together on a specific project. And I said, man, at some point, we were trying to do something together right now, and it didn't work because the third party involved, I could not get in contact with them, and I couldn't arrange a shoot to be set up in the time before I leave. So I was like, I couldn't do it. So I reached out to my friend and said, look, it's not going to fly right now. We're going to have to look at the end of the year. And so, he said, don't worry about it. The stuff that you're working on now is great, and it'll be fine. And I wrote and said, look, the stuff that I'm working on now, I don't think is great. I said, I feel like I'm doing 10 things at once and I'm not doing anything particularly well. And I think that's an accurate statement for my creative life right now. I'm pulled in so many different directions on so many things that I don't feel like any of them I'm doing particularly well. And what I said to him was that there is a realm out there of quality that once you have contact with that realm, you can't forget that it's out there. And you can't fool yourself into thinking what you're doing now is in that realm if it isn't. And what I'm saying is, if you practice photography long enough and you get lucky enough and you work hard enough, you will occasionally make images that you look at and then other peers of yours will look at and say, that is 5-star work. That doesn't happen very often. So you can make 5-star work and then not make it for a long time before you find it again. But once you've made it and you experience it and you know it and you start to be able to recognize it when you see it, then it haunts you because everything else that you're doing, if it's not at that level, it's not at that level. You can kid other people. You can con everybody online into thinking that what you're doing is great, but when it is and when it isn't. And most of what I'm doing right now is not there. And that's kind of frustrating. It really is. And the thing is, it's frustrating, but at the same time, my life in the grand scheme of lives on the planet is pretty easy. I got nothing to complain about. And again, if I'm looking to blame someone, right here, baby. Question number 4. Can you name any sleeper photographers that the public may not know that much about who are fantastic? There are so many, I don't even know where to begin. But I will tip the hat to who I was referring to earlier, who potentially showed up at his induction into a famous agency in board shorts and flip-flops. Look no further than Australian Trent Park. I think the only Australian member of Magnum Photo Agency, Trent Park. There you go. I just gave you the next 6 weeks of your life researching and studying what Trent Park has done. It is extensive, but here's the thing about Trent Park. I can't technically call him a sleeper because if you know anything about professional photography and you know about Magnum and you know about work in the past decade or so, yeah, it's kind of hard to avoid that guy. Oddly enough, though, he's not a squeaky wheel. I don't think Trent Park has a cell phone. He's definitely, last time I heard, he was not on social media. He does not have a cell phone. He does the 99.9% of his work in Australia, where he's from. And I love that. I love the fact that the guy shoots in the town that he lives in. He shoots in the country that he lives in, and he is a total badass. The last exhibition he did, which was called the Black Rose, I want to say. This could all be wrong, but I think it was called the Black Rose. It was in the museum in Adelaide. I want to say there were 10 or 12 publications associated with that show alone, and the work is fantastic. If you want a little primer on Trent Park, look at something called Minutes to Midnight, which was done probably 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. Actually, maybe even longer. It's called Minutes to Midnight. It's about a trip that he made around Australia with his wife in a 4x4 after 9/11, and they went out to basically take a gauge of what was happening in the Australian culture and society. The story of the work that he made during that trip, but also, and by the way, his wife is a really good photographer as well. It's just not just the work that they made, but the behind the scenes story of what happened on that. That's my introduction to Trent Park, was that. And I was like, who is this guy? So I think he's still kind of a sleeper. The second sleeper I'll give you is a woman out of Italy named Giorgia Fiorio. And Giorgia Fiorio is like, this is the classic sleeper photographer. I would say that 99% of the photographers I run into never have heard of this name before, don't know this person's work. I am an acquaintance of a guy in New York who's an agency director. He also lives in Paris. I call him the International Man of Mystery because his accent is one of those accents that is impossible to pigeonhole. When you hear him speak, you hear there's a little Israeli maybe, there's some French in there, there's some English in there, but there's a tilt to it, and you cannot peg his accent. He's incredibly intelligent. He speaks like 5, 6, 7 languages. Agency director, very interesting dude. He is the one that clued me into this person, Giorgia, and I want to say it's Giorgia, Fiorio, Fiorio. She did a project called Homme, which I think is French for men. I refer to the project as men. It's her work is mind-blowingly good, and you will never hear anything about her, which I also love. I have no idea if this person is on social. I have no idea what she's done in the last decade. All I know is that I kept an issue of Life magazine from the 1990s that had an article called Through the Gates of Hell. And when I opened this spread in Life magazine and I saw that lead photograph, which looked like Hasselblad 6.6 black and white from the jungles of French Guiana, and it was a story about the French Foreign Legion guys who were training down there, and that lead photograph froze me in my tracks and seared itself into my brain. That, my friends, is called photography. Everything else you see on a daily basis and everything on Instagram and most of the emails we do and most of the stuff we talk about is content. It's work that just passes by and never connects. Photography is the work that connects, and it was like Georgia's picture in Life magazine on Through the Gates of Hell. That essay was like wham. I had gotten out of photography school, had a degree in photojournalism, and I saw that picture and said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know anything, because all I know is my work is nowhere near that good. And it was a driving force for me. So those are 2 sleepers. Number 5, why are you down on street photography? Oh crap, did my computer just die? By the way, I've been trying to get a new computer now for 6 months. I just sent a Teams message this morning saying, remember me? All I want. But now what I'm thinking here, it's always buyer's remorse, even though I'm not buying it. I heard about the new MacBook Air that's coming out, the M2 Air, which probably only has 1 or 2 ports, but at this point, I don't care. The MacBook Air is plenty fast enough to do everything I need, Lightroom and 4K and Premiere. And there's not even a fan. It's tiny, it's light. That's what I want. I think I would prefer that more than a MacBook Pro. Even though the MacBook Pro has an SD card slot, which is nice, but I'm so used to using these idiotic adapters now, thank you, Apple, that, typically on a given day at any one point in time, this Intel piece of junk has all 4 plugs are used all the time, and they're all with adapters, because nothing works on this computer without adapters, and Apple, I'm still pissed at you for that after all this time. Why are you down on street photography? I'm not down on street photography. I frankly don't really care about street photography, but whatever photography we're talking about, whether it's street or portraiture or reportage or whatever you want to call it, whatever genre that floats your boat, landscape. Oy, just kidding. It has to be good. That's it. It has to be good photography. The vast majority of street photography I see being promoted sucks. Sorry. Not every kid gets a trophy, right? It sucks. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's detached. There's no connection. It's some random stranger in a beam of light between buildings. How many times have I seen that? Are you adding to the conversation or are you regurgitating the conversation? Most of what I see is regurgitation. It is not worthy of me golf clapping. Oh, you did street photography. No, I've seen it and it's detached and it's not particularly well done. When I see really good street photography, I will be the first person to say, nice, good on you, great job. That's a great body of work. I think, if I remember here, I want to talk about a particular photographer here in a minute. Yes, no, it's not in here. I don't know, it should have been. I thought about it. I got him bookmarked on here on my trusty phone. I saw some good street photography. And I'll bring up that guy. Maybe I should do it now. Hang on a second. First question, YouTube, please omit. I live in Seattle. I was reminding him also, would it be good for me to contact him? What about those of us who are hobbyists? No. Okay, we're going to talk about it now. What are you down on street photography? My nose itches. Woo! I just blew a snot rocket outside like 20 times on my bike. I just did 10 windiest miles I've ever done, and it was hellish. It was kind of cold, actually, and windy, and I was blowing snot rockets the whole time. And I didn't take a shower before I did this film, if you really want to know all the nitty-gritty. Oh, that was disgusting. I can't believe I did that. Okay. I'm not down on street photography. This guy's name... Oh, crap. I had Nate... All right, I think I know it. Someone wrote me and asked me if I knew about a photographer named Nate Gowdy, who's a Seattle-based photographer, and I said no, which means nothing because there's a zillion photographers out there I don't know. That's just a natural thing. That was true way back in the day before even people had, websites and social. There were still too many photographers back in the day for me to know about, especially if you branch out to the rest of the world where it's like, South America has a whole culture of photography that I knew nothing about because it wasn't covered in anything that was associated with my photography life and career and education. So this guy named Nate Gowdy, and somebody reaches out and says, do you know this photographer? And he's pretty amazing. You should interview him, or he should be an AG23, and maybe you should interview him. And, he's a guy that he's a straight guy, but he photographs the Pride Parade every year in Seattle. He also is able to work with the far left, like the Antifa folks, and then he's also coming out with a book on the insurrection of the far right people. And, you should check it out. And I did. And I don't know Nate Gowdy, but I have to say, his work's really good, and I like his website. I think his website was everything I needed to see and wanted to see. I think the cover of his book that he has coming out called Insurrection, I think that looked really good. You can get a signed pre-order copy for $60. That's pretty cool. And, there's a ton on that site. I was like, okay, legit photographer. But the guy who sent me the email, when he said that stuff about being able to photograph both the left and the right, and the fact that he's straight but he's photographing the Pride Parade, he's like, hey, this is pretty incredible. And in my head, I'm like, it is. However, if you are a documentary photographer or a news photographer or a journalism photographer, that is par for the course. You never get an opportunity to say, oh, I don't like those guys. I don't want to do that assignment. You do the assignment. You have to be a chameleon. You have to be able to work on the left and you have to be able to work on the right. One of the things that I pride myself on during this period of insanity in American politics and division is I have friends on the far left and I have friends on the far right, and I'm still friends with them. Do we agree on everything? Absolutely not. But am I going to cut off half of the people I know in the world because they have political views that don't match mine? Of course not. Because regardless of their political views, and let's throw religious views in here on top of it, outside of those two things, topics that make normally sane people completely irrational, they're actually good people. They're people that would give you the shirt off your back, that would help you, that would actually get along fine together if you eliminated politics and religion from the conversation. So, and a part of that is because I studied journalism. And journalism doesn't come, like I said, you don't get a trophy every day. The photo editor is not your friend. He's your photo editor. And he is going to put his boot up your wee-hoo if you're not careful. So you do assignments on whatever it takes. I had to photograph John McCain, who got so mad at me and was yelling at me and calling me names. He and his wife, by the way, she wasn't calling me names. He had taken over that department. yelling at me in my face because I basically I made a mistake at the beginning of a press conference. And because I made the mistake, I've left my strobe in the truck. I had to run to the truck, and in the time that I was running to my truck, he got in an argument with another journalist and decided to leave the press conference without telling anyone, and he was going down a fire escape in the back of the building, and I happened to come out of my truck when he was coming down, and he saw me with my camera and thought I'd figured it out from inside and had ambushed him outside, and he was screaming at me. Yes, a righty guy yelling at me, whatever. I photographed Jesse Jackson. He was not super thrilled with me either. Photographed Ann Richards. She put her hand on my back and I was all sweaty and she pulled her hand off and went, oh. And so you have to photograph everyone, everything, everywhere at any time. That is your job. And actually, it's fun. And I really wish that everybody had an opportunity to do this, because if you're only surrounding yourself with the people who believe exactly what you do, what's the point? So get out there and photograph everyone and everything. And here's the other crazy thing. I got thrown off of a property once trying to photograph a portrait of a guy. I was on assignment for a newspaper in Texas. It was like the Morning News or the Times Herald or something. And they sent me to this guy's house, and I pulled up and I parked on his property, and he looked out and saw that I was driving a Toyota. And he was an American through and through. American man, flagging the yard, got himself a fixer repair daily in the driveway, and he's a Ford man. He saw the Toyota and he was like, get that beep, beep, beep off my property. Threw me off the property, made me move my truck off the property. By the end of the shoot, we're buds, because it was just that initial friction of F you, man. No, F you. Why don't you F yourself? No, you F yourself. Back and forth. Work it out and you're buds. That's it. That's what being a good documentary photographer is about. It's not drawing lines in the sand. It's not putting people in different camps. It's about everything and everyone at all time, which is why it is so much fun. Question 6, do you freeze your film? Well, I can see the film heads out there now, just blood pressure, the film heads. Don't talk about box speed again. Yeah, there's somebody out there right now with a voodoo doll of me, with box speed. This guy's blew everything I knew about photography. It's just box speed, man. Tranquilo. Just relax. Just overexpose it. That's all you got to do, unless you're talking transparency. Do I freeze my film? I used to. I do not now. And I would if I had an easy way to do that. But so here's the thing with film over long-term storage. Film is going to suffer from a couple of different kinds of degradation. You're going to have chemical degradation of the film, and you're going to have atmospheric. The chemical degradation of the film, you can stop, for the most part, you can stop it by freezing the film. So when I lived in California, in my garage, I had a giant freezer. Probably the width of this table, which you can't see. Just think this, and then a little wider. And it was long. It was a big freezer, and it was completely filled with film. And I would freeze it, and then when I needed film, I would take it out a few days in advance, leave it at room temperature, let it warm up so that it wouldn't snap off in my 18 frames a second motor drive. And that was it. But a freezer will not stop atmospheric aging of the film. And the only way to do that is to keep your film in a salt mine, which last time I checked, not many of us have. Now, Kodak has them on the East Coast, and they actually store things in salt mines, not just Kodak, but a lot of other companies. So freezing it is good, but it's not perfect. And eventually that film over time will degrade. And some people are going to love that degradation, and others are going to say, oh, it's base fogged or it doesn't work for me. But for the most part, modern films are pretty durable films. They're way more durable than the films of old. They don't color shift as easy, which is one of the reasons why the newer films didn't cross-process well. And people who grew up cross-processing EPP and EPN, they got to all the E100 films and they were like, what happened? This stuff's too good. It doesn't go berserk when I cross-process it. Frankly, I'm glad, because cross-processing was a one-trick pony world, and once you saw it once, you're like, okay, that's kind of been done. Let's move on and get back to some good photography. So I don't freeze it now, but my film is kept in a dark area, and it's a cool room. The thing about New Mexico, 7,000 feet, if you put something in the shade and it's inside, it's cold all the time. It's like this place never gets really hot where something in the house is going to overheat. So I think the film I have is going to last for a long time. I'm actually giving a lot of film away now because I don't envision using it anytime soon, and somebody out there should be using it. Number 7, how do you feel about photographers? This could get me in trouble. How do you feel about photographers not interfering in the field, but directing their subjects? Which to me is a bit of a bizarre question, because if you're not orchestrating in the field, but you're moving your subjects around, you are orchestrating. So he put Gilden, Yakuza, Thomas Hopker, 9/11. Contact sheet told another story. Okay, so what happened was this person said that Bruce Gilden, who's a Magna photographer known for being a street guy and a dot guy, he's got these famous images of the Yakuza. I didn't know this story, but apparently Gilden said that he posed and orchestrated some of these guys to do something again and again and again. I don't know that story. I have met Bruce Gilden. I've had lunch with Bruce Gilden a long time ago at an event in Charlottesville. He's a very interesting dude to hang out and talk with. Obviously a very talented guy that's been good for a long time. So how he works, I don't know. Thomas Hopker had this picture of people in Brooklyn during 9/11, and the image as a standalone image looked as if these people were standing around kind of nonchalantly as the Twin Towers burned in the background, but apparently the contact sheet told a whole separate story about how concerned those actual people were, but taking only a single frame of that scene was deceptive. Here's the thing. How other people work is not something I can control, and frankly, I don't care anymore. I have seen photographers stage photographs. When I got a job I got an internship at a major newspaper in America. On the very first day of that internship, I was told, if you make a mistake that is in the AP style book, which is the guidebook whose rules you have to follow as you're writing about journalism. So if you're writing a story or a caption, it has to be in AP style. They said if you make a mistake and that mistake is based on something in the AP style book, you will be fired immediately from your internship and you will not come back in the paper. If you are caught staging, you are fired. If you are caught orchestrating photos, you are fired immediately. You will not come back in. So I grew up under that ideology of journalism and photojournalism. I do not stage photographs. And the thing is, if that is your omerta, you have to understand that means there are going to be times where you do not get photographs. You don't make it. You don't get it. You fail and you fall flat, and someone's going to chew your ass out for doing so. Some photographers are okay with that, and some are not. I assisted for photographers who were not okay with that, who would stage. I saw photographers pay civilians to keep other photographers out of a scene. I saw photographers, famous photojournalists in fact, paying to stage photographs at events that I was covering as well. So ethically, this is, photojournalism, especially the concerned photo crowd, they're kind of obnoxious at times, self-righteous, and they claim to be the up and up, and they're out here, protectors of the world. I have seen some of these folks do really unspeakable things to get photos, and that's just human nature. That's the way it is. People are competitive. If you're a concerned photographer, you very well may be concerned about the world and the photographs and the stories that you're telling. I do believe that a lot of those folks are concerned, but a lot of them are also concerned about their career, and they're concerned about winning prizes and making money. And you're not going to do that job unless you're making enough money to get by. So it's a weird balance that you have to be okay with not getting something. And I am. And I tell you, when you don't get something, it gnaws at you. It's worse than getting a photo. You get something amazing and you're like, oh, and you ride that high for a while, and then it wears off. Missing something or not getting it doesn't wear off. I think about pictures I missed 20 years ago. And I'm like, oh, I missed it. I didn't get it. I got to go back. I got to get that. I got to go back. I can live with that. A lot of people can't. Number 8, this is a person who reached out about doing a story for a knife company. And he had reached out to them and nobody had replied. And he kept trying, and he was really adamant about trying to do a project with this company. And all I can tell you is you have to be persistent. And the other thing too is, and look, lack of communication in the communication era is the norm. To get a response from anyone these days, to me, is shocking. For example, I reach out to brands all the time. I don't want anything from the brand. I reach out because I want to see if there's a response. And if there's not a response, I don't buy their products. Because if you have a website and you have social and you have an email contact form on your brand and you don't respond to any of it, you're not a brand I want to deal with. So I don't care if you're a $4 billion a year brand or a $4,000 a year brand. You better have you better have an arm of communication that actually responds to people. So I'll give you an example. I was up in Colorado on Monday and I was at a store. I can't remember. I was buying like 4 random things. I was buying a little thing of chocolate milk for my wife. That's a whole separate story. Coffee, wife, make her happy, whatever it takes. Little chocolate milk thing. I bought a little coconut water because I had just done a run and I was a little dehydrated, and that stuff seems to do wonders for me. And I also bought one beer. And I bought the beer because of the art on the can. I thought the can art was beautiful. And I was like, wow, that's a gorgeous can of beer. I didn't even really want the beer. I just bought it because I was like, whoever made that deserves me to buy this beer. So later that day, I drank the beer. And I was like, wow, that was a really good beer. It was like a weird blend of 2 different kinds of beers that I happen to like that are not common in the US. But this small brewery decided to not only brew both of them, but to like mix them. And I drank this and I was like, that's a spectacular beer. So I wrote him an email and saying just that. This is a spectacular beer. Nothing. No response. No reply. I never expected to get it back. I will not buy any more of their products because there are other beer companies who respond to their email. I know because they're based here in Santa Fe. And not only have they responded to emails, they've responded when I see them in person. That's the difference between a brand I want to work with and a brand I don't want to work with. If you don't respond to your communications from the paying customer base, then what the hell's going on in your communication, your marketing department? So, and by the way, this is a message to all of you. I have a sinking suspicion because I'm a darling on YouTube. I have way more people communicating with me now than ever before. And I can guarantee you that some of you have tried to email me and never got a response because it ended up in my spam folder, which I do not have time to look through because there's 10 million emails in there now. If you have tried to email me and I didn't respond, it's not because I saw your email and didn't respond. It's because I didn't see your email. I respond to every email that makes it through my gauntlet, whatever it is, my MILNOR firewall. I respond to everyone. If I was not going to respond, I would never do YouTube. I would never have a Twitter account because Blurb makes me have a Twitter account. They didn't make me, but they asked me to, and I was like, I'll keep it. Whatever, Mom. I email everybody back. I communicate with every email that comes in. And by the way, my email inbox is typically, there's maybe 10 emails in it total. Everything is up to date. I don't have these like 17,000 emails in my inbox. It's organized, up to date. If you don't get me, go to my Shifter site and use the contact form because that seems to get through every time. Okay, we're at 39 minutes. I think I'm going to end it here. There was only 8 questions, and I've got like 7 more that are really good too, and I'll have to get to those in the next Q&A. But again, I appreciate you tuning in, and I'm one person with one opinion, and I appreciate people coming in to do that, to ask questions. And I'm here now. I got to go help my wife pack up. I got to pack something, then unpack it, then pack it again, and then unpack it again. So that's the other job I have is that, which I don't get paid anything for.